Every 90 seconds, someone is reported missing. Many return to their families. For others, something has gone seriously wrong. A family is left without answers when their sister-in-law vanishes.
No one can get through to her. It's literally a dead line.
It wasn't just another homicide. The context of this case was really important.
Leading detectives to raid a family home.
So all 4 of us was arrested, taken to different police stations.
What happens in the police investigation that follows?
She went back to the very house where the murder had been arranged. She was incredibly brave.
What happens to the family at its heart?
It was so heartbreaking to see that happen because we're trying to find out what's happened to my auntie.
When missing turns to murder.
When I first met Surjit, she came across a nice, bubbly person, really kind and understanding.
In 1986, Sarabjit met Surjit when they were marrying into the Atwal family, part of the tight-knit Sikh community in Hayes, London. It was a proud moment for Sarabjit's father.
At first stage, when my daughter got married, we all was very happy. That's a good family, they are all happy.
In November 1991, Surjit and her husband, Sukhdev Atwal, have their first child together, a baby girl. Soon after, so does Sarabjit.
I had my first child in 1991. She kind of had her same year. I think it was 6 weeks apart. Her daughter was born and my daughter was born, so they kind of grew up together. Me and her used to get on really nicely. We spent time together. We were always in the kitchen together, cooking and cleaning, so we had a lot of time together. In our culture, we're told from day one that when you move into your husband's house and your family, you have to make an effort 100% to get to know them, to get yourself involved in their family and everything.
Surjit makes an impression on her new relatives.
As an auntie, I remember her being she was very confident. She was very open to talking about life in general. I'd say she was very vibrant, very open with her opinions. She wouldn't be scared or afraid to say this is what she liked or disliked, or, openly talk about her opinions on things. And I think that was nice, and that's what I remember.
Surjit makes an effort to get involved with the Atwal family. It's growing, so they buy the house next door as well.
So we lived in 90 Willow Tree Lane and Surjit was 88 Willow Tree Lane. The 90 Willow Tree Lane was the main house where mother-in-law lived, but she's bounced between both houses.
Surjit and Sarabjit's elderly mother-in-law is Bachchan Kaur Atwal. And since her husband has passed away, she's taken on the role of running the expanding Atwal family.
My duties around the house mainly looking after the kids when we had kids, looking after my mother-in-law. It was quite a big family. She had 4 daughters of her own, and they had kids as well, and they had husbands. So when everybody came over, it was quite a full-on house.
Bachchan Kaur and her husband had immigrated to the UK from the Punjab region of India, and being a deeply religious woman, she upholds the traditional Sikh faith across the entire family network.
At a young age, I was told what to do, what not to do, what was right, what was wrong. I was also told about shame and honour, and how important that was in our culture.
And Bachchan Kaur wants everyone in her family to know who's in charge.
She started warning me to make sure I was kind of being that dutiful daughter-in-law, making sure I was staying within the family culture and listening to them, obeying them. So living in that family was quite restricting. A lot of control was put on because I think as daughter-in-laws, we have to maintain this certain image within the family you are married into.
Surjit also supports the growing family by working hard.
My auntie, she used to work at Heathrow Airport as a custom and excise officer. She was there for a very, very long time.
She was really proud of. She made herself happy. She was really pleasant at work. And as we do at sometimes, when we go to work, we socialise with a bit of different kind of people. We make new friends. Surjit also supports the growing family by working hard. My auntie, she used to work at Heathrow Airport as a custom and excise officer. She was there for a very long time. She was really proud of. She made herself happy. She was really pleasant at work. And as we do at sometimes, when we go to work, we socialise with a bit of different kind of people. We make new friends.
But Surjit's work and lifestyle doesn't sit well with mother-in-law Bachchan Kaur.
My mother-in-law was the main person who kind of said that members of the community were constantly talking about Surjit's behaviour, how she wasn't behaving like a dutiful daughter-in-law.
Growing up as a Sikh in these communities, I could see there were young girls who faced quite severe restrictions, who faced the wrath of their family members if they were too westernised or too modernised or had a boyfriend. It's sometimes called so-called honour-based abuse, and it's an umbrella term which is used for a range of behaviours to control women and girls so that they are conforming to the expected social norms or cultural norms or religious norms of that community.
Surjit also experiences control over her finances. She has to hand over all her wages to her husband and Bachchan Kaur to help run both homes.
They were only able to buy that house because of the way Surjit was working really hard. And she bought that house, she wanted her own privacy, that she could have her own space. When they bought that house, my mother-in-law thought actually she can be in and out both houses.
Bachchan Kaur is closely involved in overseeing the affairs of the whole family across both homes. And some of those affairs are 2 family weddings in India that she wants to go to. She invites her daughter-in-law Surjit to go with her.
She seemed quite happy. She seemed quite, getting on with everybody, engaging with everyone, speaking about how she was going to go to various places in India and how she was going to do her shopping, buy new outfits for herself and her kids. She was really excited.
Having said goodbye to her family, Surjit and Bachchan Kaur fly from London Heathrow to Delhi. On the 5th and 6th of December, they enjoy the celebrations in rural India. Surjit's husband, Sukhdev, keeps in touch from London.
And I remember Sukhdev would come over to our house from 88 to number 90 and make phone calls to India, speaking to his mum. I don't know what the conversations were between them, but it was an ongoing pattern. He always made calls from that house.
Two weeks later, the return flight from India touches down in the UK. But Bachchan Kaur returns alone. Astonishingly, 27-year-old mother of 2, Surjit Atwal, has vanished while in India.
The point that we realised my auntie's gone missing is when, so we'd assume that she's going to come back at a certain date. She'll be coming back with the family, so we'll actually hear back to see, how did the wedding go? How was your holiday? We tried calling her. I remember my grandfather trying to call her, my dad trying to call her, all of her siblings trying to call her. No one can get through to her. It's literally a dead line.
Surjit's brother, Jagdish Singh, hears that she's not come back from India.
He spoke to Sukhdev and said, "Where's my sister?" And they said, "Your sister, she went to India, she's not come back, she wanted to stay a few days longer, we don't know." So when my mother-in-law said that, Surjit's gone missing, and he was in a panic thinking that, how come you're back from India and she's not back?
I don't know where your daughter's gone. We took her to the wedding. We've got proof that she was at the wedding. She showed the video to my grandfather to show that actually we took her to the wedding. We don't know where she went afterwards.
Jagdish was putting pressure on my mother-in-law that, you need to alert the police and tell them that she's missing. They were trying to pass time, saying that let's give it a few days, maybe she might come back, we don't need to alert the police. But who's putting more and more pressure on Sukhdev as well, saying that if you're not going to contact the police, I will.
Jagdish finds it difficult to believe that his sister could abandon her children.
The daughter was 10. She was asking, "Where's my mum coming back?"
He reports her missing to the Metropolitan Police.
He's the one who contacted the police and said, "My sister's gone to India she's not back.
Police visit the family home to understand what's happened.
They would speak to Bachchan, they would speak to Sukhdev, no other family member. I was always kept in the back room, but I often, from the kitchen area, would peep through the front room and see the police officers, and they could see me. And they would see me and just speak to Bachchan and speak to Sukhdev and just leave the house.
Jagdish asks the police to speak to the community.
They used to speak to the local temple, maybe somebody's seen her or heard from her. And then they put up some posters at the local Gurdwara, our temple, in Punjabi on one side and English on the other side, so people could read both languages.
Surjit's family helped publicise her disappearance.
We had leaflets with a reward to basically hang on to trees, every tree we could find, which we were doing. We did it mainly in the Asian communities because that's where more than likely someone within the Asian community is going to know something. That's what we were hoping. What was upsetting though, as we're putting them up, they were getting removed. It was heartbreaking. It was so heartbreaking to see that happen because we're trying to find out what's happened to my auntie for the children's sake, for the family's sake, and we're trying to reach out for help, like please help us, and we're not getting that in return. Instead, we're being rejected. It was at a point where even my father was thinking, we're at a standstill. What do we do?
Jagdish tries everything to help find his sister.
My dad wrote to Prime Minister. My grandfather wrote to the Queen. There was literally everything that could be done to reach out for help. You know, please, we're desperate.
Over the next 2 painful years, Jagdish continues trying to find out what has happened to sister Surjit. Then out of the blue, there's news.
We received a phone call from India to say, by the way, your daughter has been killed. She's been thrown in the river and you're not going to get her back. Literally within that phone call, it was said that we can't tell you who we are. We're scared for our own lives because we know the truth ourselves. But this is exactly what's happened. And the line was cut dead at that point.
Jagdish presses the police to do something.
I was in the bathroom and I had taps on my door. And I opened the door and there's 2 police officers standing outside and I was shocked.
Police are looking for Surjit's husband Sukhdev, her brother-in-law Hardev, and elderly mother-in-law Bachchan.
And I remember the police officer saying to me, "You're arrested for conspiracy of murder."
Surjit is also taken into custody for questioning.
All 4 of us was arrested, taken to different police stations.
Surjit realises that this is her opportunity to speak out against her family and tell the police the real story of what's been happening for over a decade. And how she thinks her sister-in-law was murdered.
And it was going to be challenging because Surjit, she was seen as a suspect.
So I was trying to do the right thing, telling the officers, this is what's going on.
Surjit tells the police what Surjit's life at home was like.
She started going out, socialising with different people from different backgrounds. And that kind of behaviour would be seen by members from our community and they would report that back to Sukhdev. So he would get more angry thinking that, you know, my wife, what is she doing? Because he wouldn't accept her having new friends. All he wanted her to do, go to work, come back home, and that was it.
She then reveals what Bachchan was like behind closed doors.
The mother-in-law become angry. And I remember at one point, you know, they were both beating her up, shouting and screaming at her, saying that they didn't want her to go back to work. She should stay at home, look after the kids.
Surjit then reveals to police that Bachchan called a private family meeting for a select few.
I remember mother-in-law came from the house next door. She told me to put some tea on. Then the doorbell rang again. Sukhdev came in and one of the daughter-in-laws came in as well. And we were sitting in the front room around the table. But the whole atmosphere around that meeting was really unpleasant and cold. And then my mother-in-law went on to say that Surjit's behaviour was out of control. and she said that she was going to take her to India and get rid of her. I looked at the other family members around the table, none of them said a word. It was just so hard to believe that she was talking about taking her daughter-in-law and just getting rid of her. I didn't know what to do, I was really scared.
Sarbjit confronts her husband, Hardev.
Over a number of days I kept saying to him, you need to speak to your mum because this is not right, you can't do this. You know, she's a mum of 2 kids. He just wanted me to shut up about it, not talk about it at all. And it wasn't something I could just forget.
In her police interview, Sarbjit then reveals the lengths she went to stop the plan.
The following day, I rang Crime Stoppers and I told them everything that was said at the meeting. And also on the same day, I wrote a letter to my local police station saying that this is what's happening. There's a meeting held in this house. These are the family members who were around the table at the time. This is what my mother-in-law announced. This is what she was saying. Sergeant's life could be in danger. And also saying that this is where they're going to stay in India. And these are the family members in India who are also part of what may happen out there. So all that information was given to them.
Sarbjit finishes telling the police everything she knows about Serjit's life and death.
The officer, who I actually thought he was going to understand and listen to me, said to me that we actually think, you know, you're just making the whole thing up. You're just lying about this because you're just trying to save yourself. And we just think you've got mental health issues, you need to go and see a doctor and get help. And I think that was the moment I realised, actually, you're not going to help me. You're not even understanding what I'm trying to tell you. Every information I've given to you, you're just dismissing it.
All the family are released without charge. There's not enough evidence.
My dad was in India at the time. I rang him from a phone box. I was really, really upset and angry. I was quite low, in a dark place.
I was sad because they put pressure on my daughter. And after that, I don't know what they will do. I was worried. I feel that Bachchan family is now like enemy. They are enemy to my daughter.
Sarbjit now has to go home and live with the family she knows are involved with the death of her sister-in-law. And the police investigation is over.
It was getting really, really worrying. And then Dad had a gut feeling that something is definitely not right here. She's not being her usual self. She's so vibrant, and even that side of her has gone really quiet. Like, what's going on?
Sarbjit's every move is now monitored and controlled by Bachchan Kaur and Serjit's husband.
Sukhdev, what I feel, he wasn't friendly. So that pressure come to my daughter. So that pressure come every day. Every day, bad. So there was no happy that house. Always they're all quiet, sadness.
It was really difficult staying in that family. But I knew in the background, my mum and dad were both there supporting me.
Sarbjit's trapped at home, with threats to her life and threats to her children if she speaks out.
I just had to stay in that life and just accept what was being offered and just accept what my life was in that family.
Things went very quiet from her end, totally quiet. She wasn't able to freely express what was going on.
I can recall the first time that I heard about Sergey Athwal because it was a phone call from the family liaison officer and almost begged me to take this case because he said it would just be beaten up and pushed about.
Clive Driscoll is a Detective Chief Inspector for London's Metropolitan Police.
It was Sarbjit Athwal's dad had phoned and said, look, this is what he knew. He believed Sarbjit Athwal had told him something and he felt that he should tell the police.
The reason Clive's received the call is that he'd recently taken over a new police task force under instructions from his superior, Gordon Briggs.
Mr. Briggs phoned me up and asked if I'd take over a unit which was called the Racial and Violent Crime Task Force, and that unit had actually been set up to look at cases that maybe that we could have done slightly better. But it also took on cases which had a racial overtone to them, or that there was difficulties.
DCI Driscoll first needs to review all the case notes and evidence relating to the disappearance of Surjit Atwal back in 1998.
Operation Ewlands is what it was called, and I went to Barnes Police Station and spoke to the office manager, who told me that they didn't have an Operation Ewlands. Actually said, we haven't got an Operation Ewlands. And as I looked up in the air in despair, there was 12 boxes with Ewlands written on it. He said, well, that hasn't been down for years, and it hadn't, because it was covered in dust. I can remember it was all done on paper. A majority had been done on the old system, card system. And I can remember I took it home for the weekend and read it all, and I probably knew less at the end of the week than I knew at the start. It was just so confusing. One of the very first decisions I made was to put it on Holmes.
Holmes is a sophisticated police computer system. In an instant, it can cross-check a vast amount of records across the nation's police forces.
And I will say that once that started going on Holmes, it just made sense. It enabled you to see it as a job as opposed to 13 boxes of papers. And then you did start looking at different suspects. You did start looking at different, if you like, people had given you a story and you thought, well, that can't be right.
The computer system even brings up the anonymous warning a worried Sargit had sent to police the day her sister-in-law flew to India.
Within the seconds, we'd found the letter where she told us what had gone on.
Clive gets back in touch with Sargit's father, Suabath, and sets up a meeting at his home.
I think Clive is a policeman. He do his duty perfectly. He did very good work.
And I remember turning up, and Mrs. Atwal, and I don't blame her for this at all, never looked at me once. She spent her entire time like that, with her head down, looking at the floor.
So when I met Clive, I was angry at the same time, and I had no trust. But I gave him all the information I could for him to build a picture of what was going on. And we spent probably a good few hours talking, and I told him when I was arrested, I told the officers about the letter. They didn't believe me. They said I was just making it all up. And I think Clive had a different approach. I got a sense from him that he was understanding what I was trying to tell him. And at one point he said, I actually believe what you're saying. And that was a huge relief, thinking actually I've got somebody here who is going to take me seriously.
And I felt, crikey, you know, this woman has really, you know, she is petrified. And I admired her just for coming up and seeing me. She didn't know me, but I'm a white police officer. She'd never met before in her life.
After several meetings, Clive and his team persuade Sargit to make an official statement at Feltham Police Station.
And I remember when I went there, I was shaking up. I was really scared, thinking that if somebody sees me going into the police station, I could be in a lot of trouble.
Because of the cultural complexities of the unfolding case, a legal team with personal experience is appointed.
I've been a prosecutor for over 33 years in the Crown Prosecution Service, and throughout my professional career I've dealt with cases of so-called honour-based abuse and forced marriage. I also was aware of these matters on a kind of personal basis because I was brought up in Asian communities where things like this happened. Professionally, these cases have been some of the most heart-wrenching cases I've dealt with in my career. We do have evidential challenges with these cases because most of the evidence is going to be against family members.
I made a statement, it was tape recorded, video recorded, and it was really difficult telling them all the information that went on from '98, how my mother-in-law actually sat around the table and announced what she was going to do.
And there would have been a family meeting which was unusual for daughter-in-laws to be included in. But she was called in where Bakankaur Atwal suddenly announced that they were taking Surjit to India, and she just clicked her fingers and went, we're getting rid of her.
Part of Bachankaur's anger stems from Surjit wanting a divorce from her son.
One of her ways to get Surjit to India was that if you go to India one more time with me, show yourself out there, be the dutiful daughter-in-law, come to these weddings, when you come back you're going to have your divorce. So I think that was a trick to get Surjit over to India.
Sarabjit goes over everything she knows again, except now her account of Surjit's fate is taken seriously.
She was driven out by relatives. There were witnesses out there that said they'd seen Surjit get into a Land Rover and disappear and never come back. Then Bachchan Kaur Athwal come back and confessed to that. It was confessional evidence. She confessed to it to Sarabjit.
When Bachchan Kaur had returned without her daughter-in-law, Sarabjit had spoken out.
I hardly ever questioned my mother-in-law because the kind of person she was, controlling, and she looked quite fearful kind of thing. But that day, something inside me was telling me to put more pressure on her to find out exactly what's happening. So I said to her, Surjit, and she said that he's be taken care of. She's not going to be back. We can now happily carry on with our lives. Mother-in-law's words were that they drugged her, strangled her, and then she was thrown in the river. And I kind of got shivers, you know, and I was really feeling sick to my stomach, thinking that, how can you just be telling me this? You know, this is your daughter and we were talking about, she's left 2 kids behind.
They didn't want her to bring shame on the family because divorce was seen as a failure, as a negative, and effectively outsource her murder to her family in India who carried out the act. The plotting was done in a front room parlour in West London over tea, and the actual physical act happened in India.
But with no body and a crime carried out on the other side of the world, police start to compile circumstantial evidence, starting with the Atwal's financial affairs.
We found 4 life insurance policies, about 250 grand each, that in fact that they'd taken out 3 or 4 days before she travelled.
Then Clive cross-checks the divorce proceedings that missing Surjit's husband now wanted to push through.
Sukhdev spoke to the registrar and said she was dead. So that's a government agency, the registrar. Whilst he was saying to the police, government agency, she's run to Mumbai. Basically, he was saying 2 different things.
We needed more. We also know that Sukhdev and Bachchan tried to cover their tracks by sending letters to the police in the Punjab purporting to be from the Metropolitan Police. So fraudulent letters saying she's back home, everything's okay, tried to put them off investigating the murder in India.
Speaking to many people who know the Atwals also throws up inconsistencies.
We also know that they tried to tell lots of members of the communities that she'd gone off with her boyfriend and she'd abandoned her children. Lie after lie after lie, and they continued with that.
Police press on interviewing Sarabjit, even though she still has to live with the Atwal family, while secretly giving statements against them.
She did that and then went home. She went back to the very house where the murder had been arranged. She was incredibly brave.
But Sarabjit's life is thrown into danger too. There's a press leak announcing the investigation has been reopened. Mother-in-law Bachchan Kaur makes a sudden appearance at Sarabjit and her husband's home.
Bachchan came over to 90 Willowtree Lane and she wanted me to sleep in the same bed with her, which I've never done before.
Sarabjit's husband insists she must spend the night with Bachchan Kaur. But before she does, Sarabjit makes a secret call to her sister, who knows what the stakes are.
I remember her telling me, actually, you have to get out. If your mother-in-law is staying there the night, you need to leave now. And I said, I can't leave, I've got my kids at home. I'm not going to leave my kids, I'm going to stay here. But I said to her, if you can just let the police know what's going on.
Sarabjit's sister urgently tries to contact DCI Clive Driscoll.
I can remember I pulled a load of strings and got the helicopter just to hover probably busy doing other things, but it hovered. I did it so she could hear it. So she knew that people cared.
Knowing that helicopter was there and there was somebody keeping an eye on us to making sure we were safe, and even though I was sleeping in the same bed with my mother-in-law, I kind of felt some sense of safety in case somebody took me out the back gate or something. But that night was really, really scary for me.
Sarabjit makes it through the night. But the next morning, over breakfast, Bachchan Kaur makes a chilling, familiar proposal.
She came and sat next to me and said, "I've made you tea today." She hardly makes tea. And then she went on to say that, she goes, "Since you've been married in this family, we haven't had a trip together. And let's plan something to India to go together." And that was the moment I realised, actually, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Whoa, no, that's enough. You know, because at the time, and I say this with immense respect to her, she was trying to keep her family together. She was trying to keep her little world for her children. But I'm a police officer, and, you know, someone's trying to take someone, they've already murdered someone, so they're trying to take them to the very same place? No, enough's enough.
Police swoop in on the Atwal family home. They arrest mother-in-law Bachchan Kaur, Surjit's husband Sukhdev, and Sarabjit's husband Hardev. All are charged with conspiracy to murder.
And I think that 2 days later we moved her out and put her in a place of safety.
Sarabjit's arrest is staged, so her family don't suspect her of informing on them. She's quickly released, but so too is husband Hardev. And the threats begin when Sarabjit comes to see her children, still living at the Atwal house.
Hardev came out and was threatening me, saying that, "You've said something to the police because of your statement, Sukhdev, and my mum hasn't come out. Whatever you told the police, you need to go back to the police and tell them that, you know, you've got confused or you've made it up." And there's a lot of pressure from his sisters and Hardev saying that it doesn't matter where the police put you, we're going to find you and you're going to be dealt with.
She was assaulted. She was pushed down the stairs. You know, her kids were told visitation rights. You know, there were threats made.
As the family intimidates Sarabjit, police are mounting up the case for a murder trial.
When we arrested another blood relative, they had information. In her diary, Mum's a murderer. You know, they had information that Bachchan Kaur had told them that she'd had Surjit murdered. So we now had 2 witnesses, prosecution witnesses, telling us this was a murder. Confessional evidence.
Clive decides to enroll serving officers onto his team, who come from the Punjab communities.
I thought there are things you could insult people and not even know you've done it. You know, there are different, niceties that you have to understand. If you want people to help you, they've got to understand you're trying. So Parbinder Singh, who was a detective constable, was incredibly helpful in just letting me understand the culture.
This decision would prove key during a search of the Atwal home, when Detective Constable Parbinder Singh was present.
Upstairs we had a prayer room. We only went into that room if we wanted to pray. No other person is allowed in that room. So you go in there, take your shoes off, you cover your head and you go in that room. Parbinder Singh, when he was doing the search around the house with other officers, he went upstairs, he saw that room.
The search is taking place because family members have made threats to Sarabjit using handwritten notes. It's witness intimidation.
Because they believed that we'd bugged the house. They were giving notes, not talking.
He was a Punjabi officer, so he knew about the culture and how things kind of played out. We looked around and everything, and we've got the Holy Bible where we pray. And I don't know what came into his mind. You never touch that Bible unless you're going to pray. And I don't know what came into his mind. He went there, he touched the Bible, he opened it with every respect, and he turned the pages. And right at the back, he found little notes. Harder, he wrote notes to me. He hid the notes in there, in that Bible.
So we went straight out and arrested the person and found the notes, which I think were not just from that person.
The witness intimidation charges are ultimately dropped, But the Crown Prosecution Service sends Clive out to India to obtain every shred of additional circumstantial evidence.
We went out there for 10 days. We went and saw the River Abbey, and we actually interviewed people. They said, oh, she just wandered off with her bags. We proved that she couldn't have just wandered off on her own. Well, you couldn't do that in India. You know, that part of the world, a woman, a Western woman, walking about would be in extreme danger.
With a full police investigation underway, Surjit's brother, Jagdish, is exhausted.
My father's health has deteriorated. Seeing everything that he's been through, I think mentally it's taken so much toll on him that is where he wasn't giving up on the murder investigation. I think what's happened now is that he's got to a point, sadly, where he's given up on himself. He put so much energy into finding out the truth, and he wasn't going to give up. That what it's done to his body and his soul, it's drained him, and he's openly said to me, I've given up on myself.
But while members of the Atwell family continue to be hostile to Sarbjit, Bachchan Kaur and her son Sukhdev are never released from custody. Now, finally, they face trial for the murder of Surjit Atwell.
There is no place quite like the Old Bailey. The courtrooms are some of the most famous courtrooms in the land. And so to come and give evidence is probably to come into the most overwhelming and intimidating arena that it's possible to imagine.
The QC for the prosecution was able to open that case, to be able to tell the jury that this was not just a simple case of murder. This was about the family, the wider family, the community. This was a murder which started in West London and ended in the Punjab in northwest India with a body which was never discovered.
It's long been settled law that it is legally permissible to prosecute in a case where there has been no recovery of a body, but it does pose enormous challenges to a prosecution.
For Sarbjit, having to testify against her own family is a terrifying endeavour.
It was really nerve-wracking for me going into court. I was really scared. I was really shaky. I was in a panic.
Sarbjit is not allowed a privacy screen in court, and in the presence of the accused, gives evidence for 2 full days.
The defence approach was that Sarbjit had made these allegations up and that there had been no murder. They put to Sarbjit things like family photos that had been taken after Surjit's disappearance that appeared to show that this was a happy, harmonious family and a completely different kind of family situation to the kind that you would expect after there'd been a murder.
My faith in God has never gone away. It's always been there. When I was in that box giving evidence, I felt like God was with me. He was there guiding me through. And I think that's how I got through.
But there's still no body to prove Surjit is actually dead, so it falls on the volume of circumstantial evidence collected by Clive and his team.
They were able to demonstrate that Surjit had not taken the return flight. Her bank account and her credit card had not been used since the trip to India. Her mobile phone had not been used. There'd been no renewal of her passport. And more significantly, that Surjit had never been in contact with her children. And so the prosecution were able to say all traces of her life had come to an end with the visit to India.
The important evidence that Sarbjit was able to give was bringing that case back to life. 7 years after Sergit had gone missing by detailing every step and the background as to how she lived, because remember, she was also a daughter-in-law in that house. And we had to explain to the jury why she didn't give her statement earlier, why she hadn't gone to the police earlier. In fact, she left a call for Crime Stoppers. She'd sent anonymous letters to the police.
She was able to give direct evidence that there had been a planned murder, and she had been present at a family meeting where Bashan had said that they were all fed up with Sergit and that they wanted to get rid of her.
It wasn't just a domestic abuse murder, it wasn't just another homicide. The context of this case was really important, which was so-called honour-based abuse, somebody who had brought shame on the family, and because of that, she was killed.
You can only do as much as you can do. You can call all of your evidence and you can present your case. But after that stage, it really is in the hands of the jury. And there is no way of knowing what the jury are going to make of your case.
It was a unanimous verdict. They've both been found guilty.
I think I actually found peace when I heard that they both found guilty, because I never knew we were going to get to that stage. So I feel a relief thinking we've got justice for Sergit now. You know, finally, after all these years, we've got justice for her and also for her kids as well, because they've been told for so many years, your mum left you because she didn't love you.
Bachchan Kaur receives a 20-year sentence, reduced to 15 on appeal. Her son, Sergit's husband, is given 27 years, but he too appealed, bringing it down to 20. But the sentencing means so much more.
It was the first case of so-called honour-based abuse where the killing had taken place abroad, which we successfully prosecuted in the CPS. And it sent a really strong message to the communities that however old you are, however revered you are, however religious you might seem, if we can build a case and have sufficient evidence, we will prosecute it as murder, because that's what it is, and you will be convicted of murder.
The Atwell trial was in many ways a landmark case, because not only was Sergit's body was never recovered, but also this was a murder that had taken place thousands of miles away. And so, in that sense, it was legally groundbreaking.
Whoever was living in denial, they finally got to see the truth, and I think that was the main important thing, and the main thing that brought so much relief to all of us. The experience had brought a voice to other women that actually, we're not going to suffer in silence. This is what we've been through too, because it brought a lot of other issues to surface as well, throughout the Asian community, throughout other communities as well.
If I hadn't received the support from Clive, I wouldn't know how this would have all gone. He was the only person who actually listened and took out the time to understand what I was telling him, and he basically saved my life.
She saved her life, not me. I did what I was paid to do. I know that after she gave evidence, she collapsed. I know that for a fact. In her sister's arms. I can't imagine the pressure she was under. I can't imagine how difficult it must have been for her.
But Sarabjit found a remarkable strength and purpose through her decade-long ordeal.
I've set up a charity called True Honour. We support victims of honour-based abuse, forced marriages. We get victims who come to us directly and we can support them. We train police forces and other professionals around the country, helping them understand what these hidden crimes are.
Sarabjit strives to stop so-called honour killings, like her sister-in-law's, Sergit.
Sergit was a really lovely, caring person. She didn't deserve what happened to her. She shouldn't have been taken away so young. And I just feel her kids, wherever they are, whatever they're doing. I just hope they carry on with the memory of the mum inside him, knowing that how proud she was of him. Yeah.